Whether you're leading for the first time, leading through change, or learning to lead all over again, this space is for you. No fluff, no gimmicks, just real talk from those who've led through challenges, adapted under pressure, and thrived in the face of change. Welcome to Command to Corporate, where leadership isn't just taught, it's lived. Let's get to work. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Command to Corporate. It's still floating at C2. Let us know what you think. But I am one of your not horses, hostess. LP, T is T. Welcome back, everyone. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. And don't forget, like and subscribe. But if you're back, hopefully you have subscribed. So we're going to
Did you
keep bringing
say
it to you.
host or hostess?
I don't know. It's whatever it was. I was doing yard work earlier. I'm probably tired. It was the heat. Let's blame it on the heat. For those that don't know, we're in Texas. It's not.
Yes.
We're not even in the Texas heat yet. So maybe I'm not hydrated. I do have some water here. My good old Army Green Stanley. But let's get it.
I know that there's a theme going on. Green shirt, green wall background.
Yeah, I'm trying to blend. Trying to camouflage.
Let it go.
Obviously, it's a grade to me if I picked out the OD green Stanley.
Good for you. Well,
so what we
good
got
to be
today?
back, brother.
Yeah, man, as always.
All right,
so I'll leave it to you, man. Go ahead.
No, I'm so used to you kind of leading the way, huh? I guess I should like step up every once in a while. I think where did we finish off last one?
Well, you were telling that pretty deep story. Yeah. Hopefully the drink helped.
Yeah, that was
drank one for you though. So
that was a leadership failure. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We just call it opportunity now.
Opportunity. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Okay. So speaking of opportunities, I think we've definitely growing up in the Army. There's opportunities for us to grow militarily and grow our leadership style. So I guess my question is like, so how did your leadership style evolve over the course of the military? And if you like, I could take that on, or if you have something top of your mind, feel free to go ahead.
Well, what do you have? What were you gonna?
So I thought about that, and I was like, so how did it evolve? And then I was like, as a lieutenant, I really relied on, I guess, what you call formal power, or in the Army you call rank, and I led by that. It's like, hey, private, go do this. Hey, sergeant, get me this. It was a lot of directing. As a young leader, because, well, for me at least, not really comfortable in leading, or not really having the depth of skills to lead. So, I relied on my rank. I'm an officer, so I tell you what to do and you do it. It's kind of goes back to dictating, more than leading,
Yeah.
And that's how I think I started off. And I think with that, I was also fortunate enough to recognize that I'm like, okay, as I see other leaders, I started picking up, things that I liked about those leaders.
Yes.
And it's, people always tell you, you'll always learn something from the worst leaders they are that you, because you learn at least what not to do, or what kind of behaviors or leadership style you don't need to pick up.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to kind of really keep that in the back of my mind, and I picked up a lot throughout the years. And not to say that I had bad leaders, but great leaders even sometimes have opportunity spots,
Yeah.
And I went from having, formal power, relying on that, my rank, to really kind of using the soft power. Now I'm developing relationships. Now I'm trying to get to know the person on the a soldier on a personal level. And now it's more like, not directing, but kind of like asking and guiding.
Eh, yeah.
And that's so that was the next level. And then the next level on top of that is I started really looking at my team individually. So I didn't
Mm,
everybody on my team the same way. I treated, I started looking at each person individually, what motivates them, what
yes.
they like, what they don't like, what they're good at, what they're not good at. Because like once you start tailoring things to individual soldiers,
Mhm.
if I have a soldier that's, loves math and loves getting into details, I'm gonna give him or her a spreadsheet, like, yeah, go for it. I need this done.
Yeah.
They're
Mhm.
happy to do it.
Yeah.
There's some people who are just that's the worst thing you could make them do, and they're like,
Yeah.
no, thank you. So if you give that soldier that doesn't like detail, sit them behind a computer and say, hey, do the spreadsheet, it's gonna be miserable for them. They're not gonna do a great job because it's not their passion, and then they're gonna hate you for having them do it.
Yeah.
So that was the next level or layer. And then finally, and I think once I got in, probably 15 years in the army, I started picking those things up quicker. You know,
Mm,
so I get to a unit and I look at individuals and I'm able to pick up small, subtle things on what people like and how they're behaving. Before it was very intentional. Maybe I sit down with a soldier. So what do you like to do? What motivates you? Do you prefer time off or do you prefer public recognition? Um, and it's kind of not comfortable,
yeah.
but I started now not having to do that kind of like interview questions, but
Mm,
I started recognizing just studying soldiers, looking at them, what they're
yeah.
saying and how they're behaving, what gets them excited, what isn't. So I feel like I took this journey from not knowing really much about leadership or not having a lot of skills and just strictly relying on the power the army gave me. He said, hey, here's your rank. You rank all these people, tell them what to do, and they have to
Yeah.
follow you. And then, I slowly matured to a point where, I'm relying more on soft power. I'm relying more on what excites people, what motivates people, and what, identifying what strengths they have and having them exercise that,
Yeah.
that strength. And so, because there's nothing better than like, I'm good at this and I did a job that I'm good at and now I'm recognized for it. This is like great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's how I personally matured over the years. Um, and now it's I'm super passionate about leading teams because of that. Like I get excited when I
Yeah.
identify the strength of a person and I put that person in their sweet spot, you know
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's exciting seeing them excited.
Yeah.
Not to say that there aren't opportunities to develop soldiers.
Mhm.
Obviously you want to develop those areas of opportunity that they may have.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a nice balance. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm going to put you in this position that you're a rock star. In the meantime, we're also going to kind of pick away at this area where you could improve. And so that way
Yeah.
it's more palatable, when you give them like constructive feedback on other things.
Yeah. I would say, I think my view of leadership coming up, and like you say, getting taking the good things that you want to emulate, and then those that we want to say, for lack of a better word, bad leaders, and you're like, well, I
Mhm.
don't like that, but you are learning from the experience regardless. And I think for me, I wanted to be the soldier's leader.
Uh,
That's what I wanted to be. So where I like I said, I had some great leaders in the beginning, but then when I was not with them, I'm like, how am I taking that away
hmm,
and carrying that which they've instilled an awesome foundation and build on that. And the whole focus was where I saw gaps and issues and how soldiers that may not had a good experience with the leader and how they felt. I'm like, I need to be in charge to change it.
yeah,
So that was my goal, was to how can I make rank as quick as possible where they are now reporting to me and I can change it. And I think when I finally made it to staff sergeant where I was in charge of my own section, I remember coming in and, the outgoing is leaving. But what I did is I asked every soldier, you know, up until now, what have you liked and what don't you like about your experience being here? And I would just ask them, and just each person. And of course, I'm thinking along the lines of everyone needs to be relatively satisfied. Everyone's not going to be happy, but
Sure.
how can I build a strong enough team where everyone has each other's back truly?
Yeah.
And you think about the military and people outside looking in, thinking like, your team, you have to have each other's back. But I want people to truly care about that
Hmm.
and truly feel like I will have your back. And I remember going through a medical board because I couldn't deploy. I had an injury, was going to get transitioned out,
Oh, really?
and yeah, and it was a rough period where almost like the leaders maybe thought like, and I'm talking about the company commander at the time, maybe thought that I don't know, maybe they didn't believe me. I don't, but I'm like, I have proof, documentation, whatever the case may be. But then they decide when I wasn't at my section to go interview my soldiers and ask them questions. And I was in my mind thinking, you honestly think any one of my soldiers are going to have anything adverse to say about me?
So, what were they interviewing them for?
I don't know. Almost like they're trying to see, if I don't know if I was legit, if what kind, like almost like about my character. Maybe that was it. And something along those lines. And I'm thinking I have developed a super strong team where we have each other's back. If you
Mhm.
think that you're going to go down and interview any one of my soldiers and they're going to have something negative to say,
Yeah.
you're absolutely, and they did. And no one's, I'm like, they have my back 100% of the time. And I would say, I will have your back as long as you have mine. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. But at the same time, as a leader, I remember part of the NCO Creed said you will stay fair and impartial when recommending reward and punishment. So I'm going to always treat you fairly. There's never going to be favorites. And that's the thing, when you fast forward to people in the civilian world, in the world we live in, corporate America, people will have favorites. And it's like you can establish, maybe, a better rapport with certain people, but at the end of the day, you have to be fair across the board. You have to give the same guidance you're giving one, you have to give the other. Now, whether they stand up, rise to the occasion or not, well, that's
Mhm.
where the documentation and all that stuff come in. But then thinking about like some of the things you said when looking at people as individuals, as NCOs on the receiving end, as a lower enlisted, even as officers, you get monthly counselings, reviews. So where in the civilian sector, you might get it once a year, quarterly, maybe a mid-year,
Mhm.
end of year. We have it every single month. So you, regardless of the amount of soldiers you have, and I think at the one time I might have had as low as 5, as high as 15, 20, you're still monthly doing these individualized
Yeah.
counselings, as we called it. And what I remember experiencing or hearing other soldiers from their leaders, where it's basically a cut and paste. Might even make the mistake of having somebody else's name on it, because it's like, I'm not going to put forth that effort to make it individualized, but me, I am paying attention. I'm writing notes throughout the year. And so it is tailored and individualized to the person. And you think about it, doing that for that many people on a
That's,
monthly
oh
basis,
my God.
individualized, I mean, it's like taking up half your time to get that stuff done. And you're still having to continue the mission and your the activities or whatever the case may be. It still is a requirement.
Oh
So if we
my God.
fast forward to, and I'll just drop this little bit going into corporate America, and when I had to write my own review and then give it to the manager, and I'm like, why am I writing this? Why aren't you writing this? And they're like, it's too many of you. And I'm like, you have 7 direct reports. And you're doing it once a year. And I'm like, I've done far more on a monthly basis. And I'm like, see, that right there's a gap already. I'm like, what's going on? So we'll get into that more. But I think as I evolved, I truly wanted to be that soldier's leader. And how can I be
Mm.
the best for them to get the best outcome, get the best version of them to shine, and whether it's getting promoted, just whatever they want. And some people wanted to get promoted, some people didn't want to get promoted. And again, being fair, like I remember having a soldier ask me, um, are you going to recommend me for the promotion board? And he was a specialist E4, and I said, well, uh, let me ask you something, are you doing any continuing education? He's like, no. No courses at all. No, nothing. No school. No. Have you gone to the range? Anything to better yourself at all? No, I'm not doing anything.
Really? Okay.
And I said, okay, so let me ask you a question. Am I recommending you to the promotion board? And he said, I guess not. I'm like, because if you're not doing anything to help yourself, what am I recommending you for? Based on what?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you the feedback and the guidance, but you have to then take it and do something with it. And if you do nothing, what am I doing with that? But again, it's like really trying to, I think, even I think about, I think one time we were maybe in a previous session having soldiers, like like when you talked about asking versus telling.
Mm.
I was in that position of doing that. Hey, do you mind going over here, so and so, whatever the last name, you mind going down there to the shop office to motor pool, picking up this for me? Roger that, Sergeant. I'll head on down there. Of course, I am giving you a directive, but I'm going to ask you, because that is also part of building the relationships in the military. Everyone's going to respect you for the rank, but I want them to. I'm not dictating something. I want you to. Hey, it's always a question. You mind, or
Yeah.
and ask. At at the end of the day, I'm saying go get it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask, and there's not too many instances where I remember having to do that. Um, really trying to just foster a team, and caring, whatever the case may be. And you are involved in way more of your soldiers' personal lives.
Mhm.
So it's not like the civilian world. So you're in that business way more, because it's about their well-being as well.
So you described your leadership as a soldier. You say soldier's leader. Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah, a soldier's leader.
So does that translate well to the civilian side, do you think? Or how does that what's the is there a parallel to that?
I would say so, because I do, even with the people that I've uh, been in charge of,
Mm,
when I first came into the civilian sector,
mhm,
and started working my first completely out of the military corporate space, manufacturing environment. I forget how many employees I had at the time, and I inherited a department. The outgoing. I came in, went to night shift, and I think I still tried to be that person. Now,
mm,
it's not to say that people aren't being held accountable, because when I was in the military, I studied the Uniform Code of Military Justice to the point where I'm rambling off paragraph this, section this. I was that kind of person. Like, if it was a key thing that was dated, I knew it. And I would say, and so when I'm having to write a disciplinary counseling, it is not a gray area.
yeah.
This is what you violated. It's black and white. It's not my opinion. So that keeps it, again, fair and impartial, because what did you do? What does this say? You violated that, correct? Yes. It's not me. And let's not take it personal. And also trying to train people up to say, let's not take it personal. This is business. Don't let this cloud you and then be like, oh, he's a bad, it's straight by the book. So
Mm.
I've had instances in military where I've written up someone for something, and then they're like, all right, hey, I get it. That's on me. Hey, you still coming to the barbecue this weekend?
Ah, nice. I like that.
And it's like, yeah, I'll be there, because that's the growth
Yeah.
where I have, where it's like we are still, you understand this. And coming into the civilian sector, when that same thing would happen, oh, people are a bit out of shape. They don't want
Yeah.
to talk to you, all of this stuff. And but guess what I do? I would come in, I would greet each and every person. I remember an employee coming up to me and saying, "Hey, I watch you come in here. We start the shift and you talk to every single person in the room."
Mm.
And he said, "I would not be able to do that. Like, I'm not going to connect with everyone." But just like you say, looking at people as individuals and not you're just machine operators, this, whatever. It's like, no, I got to look at you as an individual,
Yeah.
connect with you on an individual level to bring out the best of you
Yeah.
as you are, not just say, this group, how can I connect with you?
It's not one size fits all for everybody.
No,
Yeah.
no. And you have to look at it that way. And to me, and the way I knew that I had connected with the group,
Mm.
one day I showed up for my shift and they were like, one of the people that kind of took the lead came up and said, "We need to talk to you, Larry. We have a problem and we need to talk to you." And I had
When
just
you say
got,
shift, where are you? Which are you?
so I'm
Military?
on a, no, no, this is in the civilian sector.
Got it. Okay.
But when you say translating into the civilian world,
Mm.
and they came and called me into a room, all of the employees are there around this table, and they said, "We want to thank you. We recognize now that you are the leader for us."
Nice.
And I was like, wow, but I really do take away that really looking at being the employee's leader, and then all of those things that I've learned over the years, the mistakes I've made, and all of the, when I talk about, you know, talking back or showing emotion when it's not appropriate, and, you know, maybe getting bent out of shape and all of those things, when it's like just focus on, what we're here to do. Feedback is going to come. You got to have the emotional challenge, all of those things, and then trying to now coach up people and mentor, and again, being the employee's leader. So instead of the
Yeah.
soldier's leader, I'm now the employee's leader.
So I want to take a step back. I'm just when you're saying like, I knew the regulations inside and out,
Yeah,
using like quoted them.
yeah.
All I could picture is you're one of those guys that open up their pocket and will pull out a regulation for whatever thing it is. That
No,
you're
I had it
like,
memorized. Believe it or not, no, I had it memorized. I had it memorized. I was like, I was just, I just at the time I really loved being in the army. I really did, and I'm like, I'm gonna be the best that I could possibly be. And I remember I was a specialist E4, and I was on the back of a truck. Maybe we were going to the range field or something in the back of a Humvee, and there was a sergeant that was in the section. He was a staff sergeant. This is how much, because I knew how tough it was to go from staff sergeant to sergeant first class and being selected.
yeah.
And I said, "Sergeant, it is a race to sergeant first class, and I'm going to beat you." He's one rank away. And I said, "I am going to beat you." That's how much I was working. And I think at one period of time, we probably were staff sergeants at the same time.
That's awesome.
One period of time. Like I was like, I want to be it, because I felt like I want to give back.
Yeah.
I want to be that leadership in the very beginning I got to give that back to other people.
All right. So I guess I'm alone in that boat because I definitely had. I think I was at Bragg. Like this was, private first class goes all. And I grew my hair a little bit long, still within regulation, but it was long. But I'm also on Fort
Yeah.
Bragg. And so I've been certainly corrected about my hair one time. And I was like, but it's in regulation, I'm sitting there at parade dress. I couldn't say anything other than that. And so then from that day on, I had a regulation in my pocket. If somebody said something, I whooped it out. I'm like, no, read, see? So, okay. So maybe I'm the only I was one of those guys, I guess.
No, I'm telling you, I'm sure that people are listening in and they were like, no, I had my core few in my pocket. And if you were one of those people, definitely drop a comment below and say, you know what? I'm there with you, T.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
But I
interesting.
think, go ahead, go ahead.
Um, I think like my leadership style as a young officer would not go well in the civilian world, you know? Like,
Yeah.
when I said like, I relied more on formal power and position power, whatever you want to call it, coming into to the civilian side, that is not gonna fly. You try to tell somebody like that, like it's you're gonna be laughed at. I mean, I don't know what
Yeah.
else to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, look at this guy. He just came here, just trying to, you know, dictate things. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Because in that space, it's truly about building relationships.
yes.
Because it's almost like if you don't build solid relationships,
Mhm.
those same employees that can embrace you are the same group that will have you out the door or
Oh yeah.
moving or shifting. It's like it's not the same thing. Those relationships have to be established
Yes.
first and foremost.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I think that's why I think now, towards my retirement, after my retirement, I think I'm in a so much different, different place than I was, as a young officer. And so luckily that translates well, going back to, relationship building and collaboration and talking things as opposed to dictating and directing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that's certainly worked out in my favor. But I've been lucky because last duty station I was at HRC, so the Human Resource Command at Fort Knox,
Mm,
and I worked with a lot of civilians, and so that was kind of really a step in the right direction. Right before I retired, I was like, there's a lot of civilians, and of course, you have. Retired sergeants major, you have retired sergeant first classes working as civilians,
yeah.
man, and they do not have a problem telling you to F off. Yeah, they're like, I'm not an army anymore. That's what they would tell you. I'm like, I'm not doing
Yeah.
it anymore. And
Yeah.
so it was a good challenge to say, okay, well now I really have to work on building that relationship with the team.
Yeah.
So that was I was very fortunate in that way because I was essentially it was a baby step into the
Yeah.
civilian world.
And one thing when you talk about translating the civilian world,
Mm,
and I look at, what leadership lessons from the Army do I still apply today in corporate America? And one things that I do remember that I do apply is stay in your lane.
ah,
That I have not steered away from that at all. Stay in
that's
your lane.
interesting. Okay.
If it is based on whatever my role is, my
Yeah.
job, that is my job.
Hmm.
You do your job, the person below do your job, and that's it. I think that's one of the biggest ones is I'm not going to step in and start to pick up the slack that you're not doing. I'm
Mm,
going to coach you on it. I'm going to give you guidance, and then you have to go forth and do it. But I'm not going to start to creep over into that, just like I'm not going to creep up unless it's like, hey, can you do this? That's
right.
different. If someone above you is like, hey, can you go handle this? But if
Yeah.
can you cover me? That's different. But when
Yeah.
it comes to here's my job, meaning these are my responsibilities. Now, it's not to say that I won't help out and maybe jump in and do something here and there, but it's not going to be 100. I'm picking up slack. No,
Hmm.
staying in my lane. Everyone has to stay in your lane. Have if it's your job, be
Yeah.
responsible, be accountable, do what you got to do.
I like it. All right. Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. You got to do it. With it, and when we think about the military, when
Yeah.
you're on the range, they would be like, "Scan your lane," because it was too easy, and people would not think when you're down in a foxhole and you're looking and you think you're looking at your target, and then when you finally put your weapon up and you start to shoot the other person's target, it's like scan your lane, stay in your lane.
That's very true. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I guess I already covered my part of it, as far as what translates well.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, all right. So if you reflecting back, what
Hmm.
would you tell your younger self? What advice would you give your younger self?
Man, if I could go back, I mean, I know that I think, what advice would I tell my younger self? I'm trying to think about opportunities.
I think I know one probably that's you've mentioned. Yes, you mentioned last time.
Go ahead. What is it?
You've mentioned that when you were younger, you had a short fuse,
Yes. Yes.
and it
Yeah.
sounds like in our last discussion, like you
I pushed some
eventually grew out of
boundaries.
it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did. Yeah.
but it
And I,
seemed like it was something that was had potential to really get you in trouble.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if it was coming from Jersey, whatever it was, because it wouldn't take long. Like even senior people, especially I took the attitude, if I didn't do anything wrong, I didn't violate any whatever, why are you coming at me in a harsh way when I didn't do it? I'm like, what did I do? And so I
Yeah.
remember being in the field, supporting another unit, and some higher ranking person would just be like, yelling, and I would always answer with, "Who are you talking to?" And then they would be taken aback, like, "What? I'm talking to you," and I'm like, "What do
uh,
you want now?" It's like, so I think taking that step back, and I think there was probably, once we get more into the civilian side and that transition, I think if I'm going back, not to the military, but more so on that side, there was definitely lots of opportunity
yeah.
to change the approach and things like that. And then think it was that transition and still thinking about the way of life in the military, the structure, and then it's just so different, when when that transition. And even now there's things that it's just like, wow, like people may say, man, the military, this and that, but it's things that you could really appreciate in the military that you just do not have in the civilian sector at all. One of the main things people ask me, what do you miss about most about the military? That family feeling.
Ah, yes.
When you have your section, or you could say department in civilian terms, it was like a family. Like it seemed like for us, we were always together, hanging out on the weekends. It was just that kind of environment. People knew
Mhm.
each other's spouses, and it's like, hey, and you're laughing. And some people may have that experience in the civilian sector. Not to say that it doesn't exist,
Yeah.
but I just saw that way more in the military space than you
Yeah.
did. And even conversations, and being careful, because you don't have to be careful in what you say in the military, damn near, like you could almost say that what the hell you want to, and it's fine. And now we have, and even though I didn't even know there was an HR command,
Mhm.
but um it was just, you could get away with a lot more. You can have more free and open conversation.
Yes.
You know, if say for example, one of your soldiers is saying something crazy, you're trying to get there, and they're trying, quit your bitching and get back to work. Where can you say that? And this civilian,
But
get
it's
the hell out of my
true.
face and get back to work. And it's like, where is that happening?
And they don't take offense to it because they know they know your character. They know who
Yeah,
you are.
yeah,
And so it's not like it's coming from not necessarily like a bad place or a malicious place.
yeah,
You're like Roger that, Sergeant. All right, cool, moving out.
yeah, yeah,
And it's cool. It's like it's very unique for sure. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's, it's just, I don't, and probably plenty of military members that probably made some serious rank and then get out. That is probably tough. That transition, which we'll get
Uh,
into, is like you've just gone from, and it
yeah,
might be even more so for the people that were still thinking the lines of my rank is driving me to talk to you a certain way, and I can like go do this, that kind of directive mentality,
yeah,
authoritative, where it's like you're not going to make it,
yeah,
like, and you could find yourself in the door for a
yeah,
short amount of time and then you're out, and you got to look at, and in the earlier instances of that, it might be, well, what's wrong with me, versus like, or what's wrong with them, like what's their problem,
yeah,
versus I need to reflect and figure out how am I going to be better, because it has to go back to how do I establish the relationships, how do I build confidence, people can talk to me and all of this stuff. Then we can start to get into, because everyone, it's different, everyone has a job to do, and that's not to say everyone doesn't have a job to do in the military, but you might have some slackers, and there's people that are going to pick up that weight because you have multiple people doing the same job, whereas in civilian sector you may not have that, you may have one person
yeah,
doing a specific job, and if they
yeah,
slack, it's going to be clear and evident,
yes,
versus one person amongst five. Well, how they can kind of get caught up in the weeds, I don't
yeah,
really notice it so much. So
yeah. Transitioning out was, um, it may have not been as difficult as some others had experienced, but for me, for sure, I definitely there was a bit of a struggle in my transition, um, and it's the credibility is what I was really like. I was missing that feeling. It's like I walk into a room, people see Lieutenant Colonel on my chest, and it's like, oh, you automatically kind of have an idea of the storyline that
oh
person
yeah,
has been through,
yeah,
and you're like, yeah, he's done a few things, seen some things, um, and so you kind of automatically get some sort of level of respect when you walk into a room.
oh yeah,
They're respecting the rank and the experience
oh
that
yeah,
it took to get there.
yeah,
Now, a minute later, you open up your mouth and you could be a total jerk, and then it's like, oh,
yeah,
this guy's an
yeah,
idiot. How did he
yeah,
get promoted? Um, but like walking into a room now, it's just like people don't care. Like, who are you? What do you have to offer? And
oh yeah,
like you're at the bottom. Like I feel like a private every time I walk into a room of people. I feel like I have something to prove. And
yeah.
so that was probably the my biggest struggle with that. Yeah.
But see, that you brought up good points there. For one, in the military, when you say it like a lieutenant colonel coming into a room and being soldiers, maybe the higher ranking NCOs and stuff, but I know being a junior enlisted and someone telling me there's a, a colonel, full bird colonel, over there in that room over there. And you're like, what? Like, at some instance, you want to see, but then you're like, I'm not going in there. Or they're like, there's a general
Yeah.
standing over there. And you're like, what? A general? And it's just that automatic respect where you're like, wow, especially if you haven't seen them
Yeah.
before, or it's rare that you see them, you're like, well, I kind of want to see, but at the same time, I don't want them to see me.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's that automatic respect for the rank,
Yeah.
and it's just like, it commands it, until they open their mouth. But then at the end of the day, it's like that's still lieutenant colonel, colonel, general, whatever. Um, so it is yeah, and then when you do come in the room, it's like everyone's on like a even playing field almost, and that was different too when you do see people that have a higher level, but again, it's like everyone's human, everyone's like,
Yeah.
it's not, unless they're your direct boss
Mhm.
or they're like up in the C-suite area, it's almost like, well, like you say, who are you? And it's not the same. You'll be cordial, but to me, it's like everyone's putting on their pants and shoes and all at the same shirts, blouses, everything's doing it the same. It's like, what is
That's
this?
true. That's true. And I was kind of surprised by that, honestly. Um, it's, first name basis. I'm calling the SVP by their first name, and it's
Oh yeah,
that would have like never happened in the army. Like
yeah,
if you're gonna, you know, like for me, a couple levels up, a brigadier general or whatever. There's no way on earth I'm gonna call that person by their first name. You
yeah,
know, um, maybe a full bird colonel, maybe like if he's my supervisor and he's calling me by first name, he's like, hey, call me by first name. Okay, maybe.
yeah,
But anybody other than that, there's no way on earth. But so it was
yeah.
a bit of a shock to come in and the first name basis. I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool.
But then when people introduce themselves like that, and
Mm,
regardless if they're an executive director and they're like, "Hey, my name is Tom," and you're like, "Hey, Tom, I'm Larry."
yeah,
We've established like that's how we're going to address each other. And
yeah.
I've never, I think, in my civilian career, ever had anyone say, "Hey, I'm Mister Whatever." I've
Ah,
never heard that. And so everything was first name basis, which took a little getting used to, that that's the way we operate. But then it's like, okay, everyone's doing it. But then I've seen people that might not be in a corporate space, and maybe they're in like a satellite office somewhere or something like that. And then when they look at corporate, they're like, Mr. So and so is
mm.
so where I'm calling the executive director Tom, they're like, oh, Mr. and then the last name. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like, well, you can do that, but I can't. And I'm like, no, you can. But it's that separation where they're still looking at that in a higher regard. Those people are higher up. You can't just talk to them like that. You gotta
Yeah,
show some respect, which is fine, absolutely.
yeah.
But
Well,
it's different.
I'm certainly guilty of holding on to the word "sir." You
Yeah,
know,
and I
it's
do that
so
too.
hard to let that go. So hard.
Yeah,
And so, but every once in a while, like I'll use it, for like, ELT member, CEO,
yeah,
and I think I don't necessarily use it 100% of the time when I talk to them, but like, you know, I feel like sometimes like you have to recognize,
yeah,
that their position. And so I still haven't, I still use sir sometimes, for that level, but,
yeah,
yeah, different, unique experience.
yeah. Looking, thinking about, does military leadership translate well into civilian careers? Depends on the individual. Because if they are mindset of, I'm going to be the iron fist, it's like, well, then it's not going to translate well. Whereas if you've
Say
taken
that
some
again.
reflection, like if you're rolling with an iron fist
Ah,
and you're
okay.
like, I'm going to be the dictator, that's not going to translate well. But if you've owned it and truly developed, do some self reflection, it can translate very well
Mm,
into. And I think we see plenty of civilian employers valuing that leadership. They
yeah.
want that. And I think my first civilian, totally unrelated to the military job, that's what I was hired for. They wanted a supervisor, they wanted the leadership experience.
Mm,
It was in an FDA manufacturing environment. And for the FDA, you just have, as a supervisor, you have to have a degree. Doesn't matter what it's in, but you have to have a degree. So it wasn't necessarily that my bachelor's degree was anything to do with what I was going to be doing requirement, but that's not what they even cared about. It's like, I want you for the leadership experience. And so,
yeah.
or that background. And
Hmm.
it's like, okay, well then that's what I'm going to bring,
Yeah.
to the table.
No, I agree. I think the military leadership styles, and well, not all styles, I guess, but majority of leadership styles do translate well, to civilian side, and that's been
Yeah.
my experience. Especially going back to being a servant leader. Um,
Hmm.
building, friendships, relationships. I think that's definitely translated well and very, very well treated me well from this side. So yeah, totally agree.
Okay. All right. What else we got?
I think we save the rest for our next episode.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we're gonna start to get into to some meat, more meat, more meat, more meat. We already into some meat and potatoes. We're gonna get deeper into that stew. So it should be a good time. And we appreciate again everyone for joining in, listening. Definitely leave comments below, like and subscribe. We really appreciate you. We're gonna keep this thing going. So guess we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Yeah.